This episode contains mature themes. AI technology is used to enhance the listening experience. Listener discretion is advised. In the quiet town of Klingenberg, Germany, the walls of a modest farmhouse once echoed with the sound of prayers and screams. The year was 1976, and inside a small bedroom, a young woman named Anneliese Michel was wasting away. Her voice rasped, with words no one claimed to teach her. Her body contorted in impossible ways, and her family believed something ancient and evil had taken hold. Over 10 months and 67 exorcisms, they fought a battle between science and the supernatural. And by the time it ended, one question lingered. Was she possessed or destroyed by belief itself? Welcome to Three Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore three compelling theories to help you decide, what do you believe? The story of Anneliese Michel begins in the rolling countryside of Bavaria, Germany, a quiet, devout Catholic town where faith was as constant as the church bells that marked each hour. Anneliese was born in 1952, a bright, soft-spoken girl raised by deeply religious parents. She was known for her shyness, her academic drive, and her devotion to God. But beneath that serene exterior was a struggle that would one day grip her family, her priests, and the entire country in horror. At 16, her life changed forever. While sitting in class one afternoon, she suddenly froze. Her body stiffened, her face twisted, and she couldn't move. When she awoke, her classmates were staring in shock. It was her first seizure. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a neurological disorder that can cause seizures, hallucinations, and, in some cases, feelings of deep religious significance. Medication was prescribed. Her family prayed. And for a time, she seemed stable. But something was shifting inside her. By her early 20s, the seizures returned. Worse, stranger. She heard knocking and whispering when no one was there. She claimed unseen hands pushed her to the floor during prayer. Shadows loomed where there were none. She said she could smell burning feces and hellfire that no one else could detect. Her eyes darkened with sleeplessness, her words twisted with fear. Doctors adjusted her medication, Dilantin, Tegretol, Aolept, but nothing worked. The symptoms didn't just persist, they evolved. She began describing faces of demons that followed her night and day. She said they laughed when she tried to pray. By 1975, Anneliese had withdrawn almost completely from her friends and studies. Her weight dropped alarmingly. She refused food, sometimes saying she wasn't allowed to eat, that something inside her forbade it. Her parents were desperate. Psychiatry had failed them. The church was their last refuge. When the priests arrived, they found a young woman barely recognizable. She growled in voices not her own. She barked like a dog. She cursed the Virgin Mary and tore at her rosary. She drank her own urine, ate insects, and screamed for hours until her vocal cords bled. In recordings later made public, her voice is guttural, layered, chilling, sometimes sounding like multiple voices at once. She named them: Judas Iscariot, Nero, Hitler, Cain, Lucifer. Over the next 10 months, 2 priests, Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt, performed 67 exorcisms sanctioned by the Bishop of Würzburg. The sessions could last up to 4 hours. She thrashed, spat, convulsed, and muttered Latin phrases she was never taught. Neighbors reported hearing strange sounds coming from the Michel house. Growls, screams, pounding on walls. Her family began sleeping in shifts to watch her through the night. And through it all, Anneliese wasted away. By the spring of 1976, she could no longer walk without help. Her knees were bruised and torn from endless kneeling and praying. Her once radiant face was hollowed, her lips cracked from dehydration. She weighed barely 68 pounds, yet she reportedly refused medical treatment, insisting that the demons had to be fought through faith alone. In her final weeks, her words became eerie, almost prophetic. She told her mother, "Mother, I'm afraid." She said that she was suffering to atone for the sins of others. On the night of June 30th, 1976, the last exorcism was performed. She was too weak to kneel. She whispered prayers, gasping between them. The next morning, her mother found her lifeless body on the floor beside her bed. The cause of death: malnutrition and dehydration. Anneliese Michel was 23 years old. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. Her parents and the 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. Photos of her wasted body shocked the world. The tapes, her growling, the supposed voices of demons became evidence circulated among believers and skeptics alike. The trial turned the small town of Klingenberg into a global battleground between faith and science, good and evil, belief and responsibility. Psychiatrists testified that she suffered from epileptic psychosis, a rare but severe form of temporal lobe disorder that can produce hallucinations and delusions. The priests, however, stood by their actions, saying they had witnessed clear signs of possession, impossible strength, knowledge of foreign languages, aversion to holy water, and sacred symbols. The jury found all 4 defendants guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence. Each was sentenced to 6 months in prison, later suspended, and 3 years of probation. After her burial, rumors spread that the cemetery grounds were restless. Some said strange lights flickered near her grave. Others whispered that her body hadn't decayed, a sign they claimed of divine purity. When her coffin was exhumed in 1978 at her parents' request, the truth was quietly recorded. She had decomposed normally, but to those who had seen the tapes, or who believed the priest's testimony, the truth remained something less certain, something darker. Today, the story of Anneliese Michel sits uneasily between 2 worlds. To the faithful, she's a martyr, a young woman who gave her life fighting a force beyond comprehension. To others, she's a tragic victim of untreated mental illness, failed medicine, and fanaticism. But even after nearly 50 years, the same question still whispers through the empty rooms of that farmhouse in Klingenberg. Did evil truly live inside Anneliese Michel, or was it created by those who tried to drive it out? To doctors and skeptics, the tragedy of Anneliese Michel began not with a demon, but with a misfiring brain. Her seizures, hallucinations, and delusions all pointed toward one chilling diagnosis: temporal lobe epilepsy, combined with psychotic depression. Temporal lobe epilepsy doesn't just cause convulsions. It can alter emotion, behavior, and even spiritual perception. Patients have described vivid religious visions, hearing voices, smelling strange odors, or feeling touched by a higher power. To the devout, those symptoms can feel divine. To clinicians, they're neurological storms, neurons misfiring, rewiring reality itself. In Anneliese's case, these neurological symptoms blended with her strict religious upbringing, like gasoline meeting fire. Her family believed deeply in sin, penance, and divine punishment. Her mother had once considered becoming a nun. Her father was a devout Catholic who attended Mass twice a week. The idea of demonic influence wasn't foreign. It was part of the air they breathed. When the seizures began, doctors prescribed medication, anticonvulsants like Dilantin, Tegretol, and Aolept. But each came with its own side effects: dizziness, fatigue, blurred vision, depression. As her condition worsened, she developed what psychiatrists later described as religious psychosis, a rare but documented phenomenon where delusions take on spiritual content. Her decline followed a tragically predictable pattern. The longer the hallucinations persisted, the more she and her family turned to faith for explanation. Each failed treatment reinforced their belief that medicine couldn't reach what was happening inside her. And when her hallucinations turned violent, when she began hearing voices mocking her prayers, when she smelled what she called hellfire, the interpretation shifted. To her family, it wasn't epilepsy anymore. It was the devil. During the trial, Dr. Richard Roth, one of the medical experts, testified that Anneliese showed classic symptoms of schizophrenia and epileptic psychosis. He said her brain was likely in a constant state of electrical chaos, producing voices, visual distortions, even the feeling of being inhabited. He pointed to her sudden shifts in behavior, her delusions of guilt, and her refusal to eat as evidence of a psychiatric collapse. But the most haunting evidence supporting the medical theory came not from science, but from the tapes. When played in court, the audio revealed moments between the growls and screams, brief flashes of lucidity. In them, Anneliese begged for help. Her voice was faint, exhausted, desperate. "Please," she whispered, "I don't want to suffer anymore." It was the sound of a mind breaking under its own weight. The tragedy, skeptics argue, is that she might have survived, if only her illness had been treated with compassion and medical consistency instead of ritual. By the end, her condition was irreversible. Her body starved, her brain likely swollen from malnutrition, her organs failing one by one. To science, the story of Anneliese Michel is not supernatural at all. It's a case study in how faith and untreated illness can intertwine into something catastrophic. A haunting reminder that the mind can create its own demons. Still, that conclusion doesn't explain everything. How did she know languages she was never taught? Why did her voice shift between registers? Low, guttural, almost inhuman, even when she wasn't seizing. And why did so many witnesses, including priests, claim to feel a presence in the room during her exorcisms? Something cold, heavy, oppressive. If the first theory sees her as a victim of her own mind, the next suggests she was a casualty of something larger, not demonic, but human. The intersection of faith, fear, and cultural obsession. If the medical explanation sees Anneliese Michel as a victim of her own mind, this theory views her as a victim of the world around her, a world steeped in fear, faith, and superstition that blurred the line between devotion and destruction. Germany in the 1970s was not far removed from its most conservative religious roots. In rural Bavaria, the Catholic Church remained a moral authority. Families confessed weekly, priests visited homes, and sin was not abstract. It was personal, measurable, and punishable. For a young woman raised to believe in divine justice, illness wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. To suffer was to atone. Anneliese's family was especially devout. Her mother, Anna, saw her daughter as chosen, a soul touched by God through suffering. When Anneliese began hearing voices and reacting violently to religious objects, it confirmed their deepest fears and beliefs. They sought guidance not from psychiatrists, but from priests. And those priests, too, lived in a time when possession was still seen as a genuine threat to the soul. In 1973, the movie The Exorcist hit German cinemas, sending shockwaves through the public consciousness. Overnight, exorcism, once a medieval relic, became a cultural phenomenon. Church leaders were inundated with requests to perform them. To the public, demonic possession suddenly felt real again. And into that atmosphere walked the Michel family. When they contacted local priests, several refused, suggesting continued medical treatment instead. But one, Father Ernst Alt, believed her. After visiting the family, he wrote to the Bishop of Würzburg, claiming he'd witnessed a genuine possession. He said Anneliese's behavior defied medical logic. She couldn't enter a chapel. She hissed at crucifixes. She growled when prayers were said. She doesn't look like an epileptic, he said. It's something else. The church eventually granted permission for an official exorcism under strict conditions. What followed, 67 sessions over 10 months, was conducted in near secrecy, with little oversight. Neighbors heard screams late into the night. Family members described a smell of rot, objects moving on their own, and moments where Anneliese's strength seemed superhuman. Whether those memories were real or distorted by fear, we'll never know. This theory argues that what happened next was not the triumph of faith, but its failure. The church's refusal to intervene medically, the priest's conviction that they were saving her soul, and the family's blind trust in divine authority, all combined into a perfect storm of tragedy. Anneliese became trapped between two worlds, the doctor's office and the confessional booth. The more the priests insisted that demons were inside her, the more she believed it. Her delusions grew sharper, her guilt heavier. When she refused food, she said she was offering her suffering for the sins of others. In her own mind, she was dying for a reason. By the time she died, she wasn't just a patient. She was a martyr. Her family buried her with religious ceremony. Photos of her frail body circulated through Catholic circles. Pilgrims came to her grave. Some claimed miracles. Others claimed to hear her voice in prayer. And in the aftermath, something even more disturbing happened. The church distanced itself. Officials declared that mistakes were made, that procedures weren't followed, that approval for the exorcism had been given too freely, but they never denied the possibility that she had been possessed. The community around Klingenberg split in two. Some condemned the priests for negligence. Others believed they had done all they could, that they had fought the devil himself. The media, eager for sensation, turned the story into a symbol of religious extremism. This theory paints a picture not of demons, but of belief itself, powerful enough to kill. It asks whether faith can become its own form of possession, consuming reason and compassion in the name of righteousness. And yet, even this explanation falters when you return to the recordings. When you hear that voice, low and rasping, layered in tones no one could quite explain. When you see the photos of her thin, distorted face, eyes rolled back, veins standing out like cords. Maybe she wasn't consumed by belief. Maybe belief was her last defense against something far older, something the priests recognized instinctively, even as they failed to save her. If the medical theory explains what happened to Anneliese Michel, and the cultural theory explains why, then this one asks, what if both are wrong? What if the horror she endured wasn't human at all? From the beginning, there were signs that didn't fit the medical model. Her seizures stopped responding to medication. Her personality changed in ways no doctor could map. She began describing things no one had told her, secret sins of those around her, the smell of sulfur when no one else smelled anything, the sound of wings brushing against walls at night. Witnesses said her eyes would darken, her posture twist, and her voice drop several octaves into something not her own. Sometimes, multiple voices spoke at once, layered, arguing, mocking, fighting for dominance. The tapes capture those moments in gut-wrenching detail. 7 distinct voices identifying themselves as Lucifer, Cain, Judas, Nero, Hitler, Fleischmann, a defrocked priest, and one unnamed spirit from hell. In those recordings, the voices growl in overlapping German and Latin, spitting curses, blasphemies, and distorted laughter. And then, sometimes, her normal voice breaks through, pleading, crying, whispering, "Stop." By the winter of 1975, even the priests performing the exorcisms seemed frightened. Objects reportedly moved without touch, crucifixes shattered. During one session, a heavy wooden rosary snapped in two while lying untouched on the floor. Neighbors claimed to hear something through the walls, something like an animal roaring, followed by weeping. Her strength, too, became unnatural. Witnesses said she threw men twice her size to the ground. She dropped to her knees hundreds of times per day, an act of penance, until her knees bled and bones swelled. When asked why she did it, one of the voices reportedly said, "She does it for us. She will never be free." Photographs from those final months are almost unbearable to look at. Her cheeks hollowed, her lips cracked, her skin gray and bruised. Her eyes, once gentle and intelligent, had become wild, unrecognizable. In some, her mouth is open mid-scream, teeth bared, and her hands seem frozen in a claw-like grasp. And yet, her story didn't end there. The day before she died, Anneliese reportedly said, softly, "Mother, I'm afraid." Then, hours later, her tone changed, calm, resigned. She whispered, "Mother, I'm free." Her parents claimed that the room grew still after that, oppressively quiet. No more noises, no more scratching, no more voices, just silence. The church never released the full exorcism tapes, only fragments. Those fragments still circulate today, distorted, eerie, filled with impossible sounds. In some, you can hear her breathing, slow, labored, followed by that growl, that impossible, layered growl that no analysis has ever quite explained. Audio experts who examined the recordings decades later couldn't replicate the effect without digital manipulation. Even slowed or filtered, the growls contain harmonics beyond the natural range of a human throat. Some believe it's the product of overlapping frequencies from multiple recordings. Others say it's something that defies explanation, something ancient, something real. If this theory is true, Anneliese Michel was not a mentally ill young woman or a religious martyr. She was a battleground, her body and soul caught between the seen and unseen. Her death wasn't neglect or martyrdom, but sacrifice, the end of a spiritual war that her body simply couldn't survive. But even then, the story refuses to rest. After her burial, visitors claimed to hear whispering near her grave. Flowers wilted overnight. Cameras malfunctioned. One pilgrim said she felt a presence kneeling beside her, pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. And perhaps the most haunting detail, when her body was exhumed in 1978 for investigation, officials reported that it had not decomposed as expected. The church denied any supernatural meaning, but believers took it as a sign, proof that her suffering had sanctified her. So, what really happened to Anneliese Michel? Was she sick, misguided, possessed? Or was she all three? A mind and body torn apart by forces neither medicine nor faith could fully understand. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Three Theories. The story of Anneliese Michel remains one of the most disturbing and controversial cases of the 20th century. A haunting intersection of faith, medicine, and mystery. Was she a young woman suffering from undiagnosed neurological illness, her body and mind collapsing under the weight of hallucinations and religious guilt? Was she a tragic product of her time, crushed by a culture that blurred the line between belief and delusion, where priests and family mistook disease for damnation? Or was she something else entirely? A soul caught in a battle far beyond human comprehension, her suffering proof of a darkness the world refuses to believe in. What do you believe? To explore this case further, visit the resources linked in the show notes and on our website, threetheoriespodcast.com. There you'll find photographs, transcripts, and expert analyses that shed light on both the faith and the fear surrounding Anneliese Michel's final months. We want to hear your thoughts and theories. Share them with us on social media using hashtag 3theoriespodcast and join the conversation about this deeply unsettling case. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more curious minds like yours and keeps us exploring the world's most chilling and mysterious stories. Join us next time as we uncover another shadowed case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes Truth is stranger than fiction.